Good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning, good morning. I'm meteorologist Tom Schmidt with Ozarks First in Springfield, Missouri. Happy Thursday morning. Today marks the first day that we see our very first hurricane forecast or hurricane outlook from the National Hurricane Center. You may notice, though, if you go on to the National Weather Service website and the National Hurricane Center website, for that matter, that there's some changes in how the maps look, all right? Not only just from the products that they've released, but also in some of the naming. All right, that means it's time to get political. Okay, this right here, this document we're looking at right now is the executive order that President Trump signed January 20th, 2025. Now, this executive order, down to Section 4, renamed the Gulf of Mexico into the Gulf of America. Now, because it's an executive order, it's only really legal, technically, that federal agencies, federal departments follow this new naming. Private sector companies at this time don't necessarily have to follow that. But that kind of gets kind of hairy then, right? Because the government agencies and their products will show Gulf of America. Meanwhile, the private companies and agencies, private agencies, are not required to adjust to the new name, but they can if they choose to. I mean, if you want to, go ahead. The executive order means that the National Hurricane Center now will be following the name change to the Gulf of America for all of its products. Many private sector meteorologists may choose to follow the same naming following the executive order, but note that they are not required to follow them at this time. It gets kind of tricky, right? Okay, looking at the National Hurricane Center, this is their main hem page here. By the way, this is the first, like I mentioned, the first tropical cyclone outlook they've produced for the 2025 season. And this came out this morning around 8 o'clock. So here we go. No tropical cyclone activity expected for today, tomorrow, and the next 7 days. Things look pretty quiet. Really don't pick things up either until late summer, early fall. Okay, so if you go to their map here, you can see it's labeled, yeah, guess what? Gulf of America. There it is. Their forecasts call for the Gulf of America. They no longer have it Gulf of Mexico. Had to change it from the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America because of that executive order, because they're required to follow it. Well, may have you asking then, well, what's the rest of the industry going to be doing? This may have put many private sector meteorologists, like us here at Ozarks First, in a tough spot. Okay? Maybe you may not think it's so tough, but what are we going to say? Can't be right all the time. People are going to get upset no matter what you say, it seems, these days. So will they be upset about Gulf of Mexico? What if we say Gulf of America? What do we say? Well, before we jump into that a bit, I'll give my 2 cents on that in just a second. But we're going to take a look at some local landmarks here in the Ozarks that have also had some name changes over the years. The first one that I could find was Lake of the Ozarks. Believe it or not, wasn't always thought to be called Lake of the Ozarks. Now, construction at Lake of the Ozarks started in 1929. It was completed in 1931. Now, throughout its construction, several names were thrown out. Osage Reservoir, Lake Osage, Lake Benton, Lake McClurg. And then finally, it was decided upon in 1932, after construction was completed, to go for Lake of the Ozarks. Now, that's a little different from going from Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America. Just not as big, right? And the Gulf of Mexico was pretty already a well-established name. Lake of the Ozarks was changed pretty early on, a couple years in the beginning. So another example from the Ozarks, was able to find this, was the renaming. You saw this all over the country, too. I had a swath of these go through over the past 10 years. The renaming of certain things, streets, schools, nature sites, all kinds of things like that may have had not so friendly backgrounds in the naming. There's been a big push recently to change some of those names for the sake of history, right? So here in Missouri, there are 4 sites recently, 2022, I believe. They renamed the name of the parks and name of the nature sites to remove what was then determined to be a slur term, squaw. It was determined to be an offensive slur, I think back in maybe it was 18 or 19, somewhere in there. But these names changed, I want to say, in 2022. Most of these sites, however, are pretty small creeks, small nature areas, they're practically unimportant for the rest of the country, right? Let alone the globe. A little different situation there for the Gulf of America. Now, most people will refer to the Gulf, the newly named Gulf of America, as simply the Gulf. That was the case even before the executive order was passed. Now it just happens to be that everybody's talking about it, right? It's risen to the top of conversation, I guess, recently. Now, unfortunately, like we talked about a moment ago, if meteorologists, like us here at Ozarks First, go beyond calling it the Gulf, it has now become political. And that's especially true on social media. The weather trolls are real. Can't please everybody. So that kind of puts us in a sticky situation. Well, what do we call it? You want to just play it safe? You want to follow the executive order? Follow the legacy name? What do we do? Well, our job as meteorologists, of course, hasn't changed. We're still tasked with providing you an accurate forecast, especially when significant weather is concerned, hurricanes especially, coming out of the Gulf of America. New name change there. Although some names have changed, the naming we use, don't get too down on the details on it. That shouldn't change how we view the weather, right? So you want to just be weather aware when the situation demands it. For a short time at least, I imagine the naming will be mixed like it is now. You'll still see Gulf of Mexico, Gulf of America, or just the Gulf. See a mix of names. We all know what we're talking about. So what's more important is knowing the storm risk, especially during hurricane season, right? Now, the National Hurricane Center, like we talked about, will be using the name Gulf of America for the Gulf. Other platforms will use the name Gulf of Mexico, all right? Now, today, both names are legally correct. The executive order only being enforced on the federal level. Private companies, free to do what they want. Follow the federal government if you like, stick to your own thing, or call it something completely different. Just whatever works. But generally, Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico, or the Gulf. You'll hear those terms mixed this season, storm season for hurricanes. And, so it'll be that way probably for a while until one or the other gets more established. We'll see what happens there. If you want to hear the Gulf of Mexico instead of the Gulf of America, I say don't hold your breath, right? Now, if you want to hear the Gulf of America instead of Gulf of Mexico, also, I would say don't hold your breath there either. So it's kind of a tricky spot, right? But again, don't get caught up in the name changes. Our jobs as meteorologists really hasn't changed much. I will probably slip up a few times just to avoid comments or getting political. We never thought I'd have to tiptoe around the name of the Gulf, right? But just to avoid any kind of upsetting comments from folks or angry emails. I don't want those anymore. Just going to stick to saying the Gulf. Keep it basic. Again, never thought I'd have to tiptoe around such a generic name, but that's what it's kind of turned into for now. You'll hear me say Gulf of Mexico occasionally. You'll hear me slip in Gulf of America as well. Just be patient. Just know it is what it is, right? There's two names floating around, and I guess until Congress actually passes a law, then it really is, everywhere has to change their name. And, I'd be inclined to follow the federal government on this one, going towards that name again, Gulf of America. That's the new change they've made. But just to stick to what the Hurricane Center puts out and what the federal government puts out, including the Weather Service for naming, it might just be simpler overall just to follow that one with what they're doing to limit confusion. Not that there would be any confusion, of course, because everybody's we know what you're talking about. Everybody kind of gets the picture, right? So anyway, for the time being, I'll just stick to the Gulf, but slip-ups will happen on occasion. Just be patient. Don't be a troll, right? Don't send us emails. Don't be upset. Don't just try to be patient and not get too upset with the naming. Just stay weather aware. That's our main goal as Ozarks First Meteorologists, to keep you safe and informed and produce an accurate forecast like we've been doing, giving you the most accurate forecast in the Ozarks for the past 9 years. And we're going to keep on delivering on that message regardless of what the names are. Times change, and we got to change with them, right? All right, so I'm Ozarks First Meteorologist Tom Schmidt, talking about the Gulf of America, Gulf of Mexico naming, and that's kind of my 2 cents. Happy Thursday. Stay weather aware. Friday and next week, we're going into a stormy pattern for the middle to end of May.